Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we are going to study political security, another new sector introduced by the Copenhagen School. But before defining political security, political threats, and referent objects in the political sector of security, let's have a quick recap of what we have learned so far. In its attempt to widen the concept of security after the end of the Cold War, the Copenhagen School introduced four more sectors in addition to the military sector. We studied in class the military and societal sectors, right? And you are doing short written assignment on the economic and environmental sector. I will choose the best summaries of each environmental and economic sectors, and we will share it. We will share them together. So we left with the political sector, right, which will be handled in this lecture. So why I choose to focus on political security? Well, because it is the most confusing sector of the five sectors introduced by the Copenhagen School. It is the most confusing because it is the widest one and it is the residual one. So let's explain uh, this in detail. How come it is the widest of all, the widest sector of all? Let me give you a simple definition of political security to appreciate how it is the widest sector of all. Political security refers to the political or the organizational stability of a political unit. So it concerns with all kinds of threats to the organizational stability of a political unit. Here we've got three elements of this definition. The first, we've got a political unit. So what the political unit is all about. So what is a political unit? Second, what the organizational stability is all about. Third, what are kinds of threats that the organizational stability or the political unit may be exposed to. Let's start with what we mean by a political unit. Political unit here is our referent object, right? The threatened object that needs to be protected. According to the Copenhagen School, the main political unit is the state. So the state is the main referent object in the political sector of security. But you know what? We've got other political units, which may be considered as other referent objects. We've got, for example, subnational entities or stateless nations, like, for example, Catalonia in Spain, Scotland in the United Kingdom, Iraqi Kurdistan in Iraq, Wallonia and Flanders in Belgium, and Quebec in Canada. These are political units. We call them subnational entities or stateless nations, right? Also, stateless societal group may be considered as a political unit. For example, a tribe or a clan. we've got also a quasi-supranational unit. Most important, the European Union. So the European Union as a supranational unit is a political unit and is a referent object in the political sector here. And finally, we've got the international system. The international system may be considered as a referent object. Just imagine the situation when the fundamental principles of the international system are threatened. I mean, two of the fundamental principles of the international systems that has been established since the end of the Second World War are the prohibition of the use of military force in international relations and the non-intervention principle. But sometimes these two principles became under threat. So in terms of referent objects, we've got many and different referent objects in the political sector of security. This is how come it is so wide. It is the widest of all. Let's get to the second element in the definition of political security, which is the organizational stability. So what the organizational stability is all about? Let's take the example of the state, because the state, after all, is the main referent object in political security. So what is the organizational stability of the state? Sometimes the organizational stability of the state called the political order. The organizational stability or political order of a state is based upon three main components. A physical base, meaning territory, institutions or government structures, and ideas. The physical base refers to territory, so political security would be concerned with defending the territorial integrity of the state. But this is included in the military sector. So, therefore, it is excluded from the definition of political security. So, we left with two elements: institution or government structure and ideas. So, institution or government structure is based upon ideas. So we are talking about the legitimacy of institution, which matters the most. So institutions are all about ideas. So we are talking about the legitimacy of the regime. So the form of government. We've got three branches of government: the legislature, the executive, and judiciary. And these three branches together constitute the regime or the government structure. The whole government structure at the last analysis expresses an idea, which is legitimacy. Are the people satisfied or support the form of government adopted in Egypt or in the United States or Britain? So legitimacy here needs to be protected. So when you doubt the legitimacy of the regime or the government structure, here you go. Political security is under existential threat. The third element in the definition of political security is the idea. The state, after all, is all about idea. Is an idea. The state is an idea. So what are the ideas protected or the state are based upon? Any state is based upon ideology that justifies the its form of government, the kind of governance it adopts or it exercises, and identity, national identity. But you know what? National identity is handled by societal security, so it is excluded from the definition of political security. So we are left with what? With legitimacy and ideology, and also ideology may refer to nationalism or socialism or liberalism. So here we are left with with ideas. So political security is to defend these kinds of ideas: legitimacy of the state, the ideology of the state, and there is one word that combines both together, which is sovereignty. So sovereignty, defending sovereignty means that defending the ideology of the state, defending the legitimacy of the state from any kinds of intervention. So we came up with the idea that political security is all about defending the sovereignty of the states. So what kinds of threats the state may be exposed to? Many and different threats. And the Copenhagen School actually classified the threats that the sovereignty of the state may be exposed to into 7 categories. So now, to appreciate how the political sector of security is the widest sector, we've got many and different referent objects in the political sector. We've got many and different types of threats different objects may be exposed to, and even the concept of sovereignty is so comprehensive concept. Also, political security is a residual sector. How come? Because you remember when we excluded all threats to national or territorial integrity of the state, because it is included in the military security. And we excluded the identificational threats, so threats to identity and the societal cohesion, right? Because these kinds of threats are handled in the societal security. It is residual in the meaning that we are talking about what? About all kinds of non-military, non-societal, non-environmental, and non-economic threats to the sovereignty of the state, right? So this is how come we are talking about the most confusing sector of security at all. Now, what are the kinds of threats to the political sector of security? Well, threats that are considered of political type are aimed at the organizational stability of the state, are aimed at the state's sovereignty. And you know what? Sovereignty is exercised by the government, by the regime, and has two aspects. The first, the internal aspect and external aspect. Internal aspects mean the government is the highest authority within its territory, and it controls the territory and the people who live on that territory. External aspects mean states must be treated as sovereign political unit by other states. And if you want to appreciate what sovereignty in the international arena means, it means non-intervention. So you treat me as equal and you don't, or you refrain from interfering in my domestic affairs. This is how come the external sovereignty has a sister concept, which is non-intervention. So let's get to the internal aspects of sovereignty, how the internal aspects of sovereignty may be threatened. Well, the authority or the authority of the regime might be threatened by any attempt to overthrow the government. So any attempt to overthrow the regime or the government is considered as a serious political threat. Take for example now why the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is considered as a political threat. Well, because it tries to overthrow the government. And it questions, and this is the most important part, the legitimacy of the political regime established in Egypt after June the 30th, right? The Muslim Brotherhood, for example, is calling it a dictatorship or a military coup. So this is how come the Egyptian government considers the Muslim Brotherhood as a political threat. How the external aspect or features of sovereignty may be threatened. Well, if states or other states don't recognize the regime that represents the state, so non-recognition would be a serious political threat. I'll give you an example. Why Egypt considered the decision taken by the African Union to freeze Egyptian membership in the organization in 2013 as a political threat, because it meant that the members of the African Union didn't recognize the new regime established after June 30th in Egypt. And this is why the Egyptian government struggled to get or to retain its membership back, or to get its membership back that was frozen in 2013. So the thing is that here, all kinds of threats to the organizational stability, to state sovereignty, internal sovereignty or external sovereignty, would be considered as political threats, period. Here, the Copenhagen School of Security Studies distinguish between weak states and strong states in terms of the impact of threats. I mean, they would say, well, weak states are threatened more by internal types of political threats, while strong state may be exposed or may be threatened by external ones. Anyway, the Copenhagen School of Security Studies categorizes political threats to the organizational stability of the state into 7 categories. The first category is we are talking about international threats to states on the basis of their state-nation split. So we are talking here about some other actor, other states, raises secessionist or separatist claims within the state. So, for example, if we got here the United States encourages the Iraqi Kurds to have or to separate from Iraq. So this is considered as an existential political threat to Iraq or to Iraq's sovereignty. We've got here why sometimes the relationship between China and Turkey or China and the United States is so tense, because the United States is encouraging Taiwan to continue separated from China, and China struggles to have Taiwan back, right? Because it considers Taiwan as a region, a Chinese region, right? So these threats have negative effects on the stability of state structure and the undermining of state ideologies. The second category is that international threats to states on political, ideological grounds. Here we are talking about the ideology on which the government operates is not widely accepted. I mean, the obvious example in North Korea. Why North Korea is threatened? Because the ideology, the political ideas that North Korean regime is based upon is not recognized by by the majority of the states in the world. We've got many and other examples, but another good example was the Cold War. The Cold War was, I mean, to have a simple definition, the Cold War was about ideological confrontation between capitalism or liberal capitalism on the one hand and socialism on the other hand, right? So the spread of socialism or communism was considered as political threats to the United States and West Europe, right? And this is how, for example, the United States and the Western camp adopted many and different strategies to contain socialism or communism within the Soviet Union, right? The third types of threats are unintentional unit-based threats to vulnerable states. So first off, we are talking here about weak states or vulnerable states. So it is like we are talking about Estonia or Croatia or Bosnia or Kosovo, Kosovo. So we are talking about here vulnerable states. So it is like a vulnerable state, Croatia, Kosovo, Estonia, Latvia, South Sudan. A vulnerable state's survival as a state or existence as a state is threatened unintentionally by other states. For example, if Serbia, for example, define what is Serbia in on ethnic terms, this would be a threat, a serious threat to Croatia, to Bosnia, to Kosovo, and to other former Yugoslavian states. If Russia, for example, define what is Russia in ethnic terms or linguistic terms, this is considered a serious threat to Ukraine, which includes many Russians and many Russian-speaking people. It would be considered threats to all the Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia. So here we are talking about unintentional unit-based threats. I mean, unit-based threats means you are here threatening the survival or the existence of a vulnerable state as a state. The fourth category identified by the Copenhagen School as political threats is unintentional threats to states in political ideological grounds. Here you are threatening the ideological grounds of the state or the ideology of the state, the ideology adopted by the state. For example, here, the Judaization of Israel. So Israel now is defined as itself as a Jewish state. So this is considered a threat to Palestine or the Palestinian Authority, right? Also, um, um, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was a threat to Israel. Why? Because it questioned the ideology of Israel as a racist state, a racist state, right? So here, conflicts of this type are not common anymore because now ideology after the end of the Cold War doesn't play a major role in international system. But I gave you two examples. The fifth category is security of and against supranational regional integration. So here we are talking about supranational or regional organization threaten the legitimacy of the state, right? For example, the EU is considered by some of its members as a threat, a threatening member state sovereignty. This is how come you studied the evolution of the European integration, and this tension it always exists in the evolution of the European integration. The tension between, you know, member states prefer the intergovernmental approach to the European integration, which is based upon nation or government's consensus, and the supranational approach to the European integration, so creating supranational institutions out out of the state's control, right? State threats to supranational regional integration formation. So we've got here two kinds of threats. So it is either a supranational or a regional organization threatening the state, or the state itself is threatening the evolution or the formation of a supranational or regional organization. For example, here the Brexit is seen as a threat to the European integration. The sixth category refers to systematic principled threats against states that are vulnerable because of a state-nation split. Here we are talking about what? About some principles, some policies adopted at the international system level. And these principles or these policies or are threatening nation states, are threatening to split nation states. For example, the idea of self-determination that was appeared and was very common after the Second World War threatened many states and resulted in splitting of many states. The idea of or the principle of self-determination. Every nation has or should have or must have its state, right? The seventh and last category of political threats refers to structural or systematic threats to states on political ideological ground. So a state's political system here is challenged by general development of international society or ideas or policy, like for example democratization wave, supported by the international society after the end of the Cold War, was considered as a threat to non-democratic states, most important the Arab states, for example. Or we are talking here about what? About the adoption of human rights as political ideology of the international system. So also the idea or the idea of human rights is considered as a threat to some states. Humanitarian intervention adopted by the international system, the United Nations, so is considered as a threat to state sovereignty. As a matter of fact, you know, humanitarian intervention as a threat to state sovereignty applies to both strong and weak states. For example, China, the United States is considering humanitarian intervention as threats to national sovereignty. But the classical example now resolved was that of the anti-apartheid policy in South Africa. So the international society adopted anti-apartheid policy towards South Africa. And this was considered as a serious existential threat to what? To state sovereignty, which was based upon ideology. Which the ideology was all about, the ideology was based upon apartheid. So the separation or the segregation between the blacks and white. Now you are threatening the basic ideas or ideology that South Africa was based upon. So this is why the adoption of anti-apartheid policy was considered as an existential threat to South Africa in the past. The last issue I would like to shed light on concerning political security is referent objects and securitizing actors involved in political security. I explained that in political sector of security, we've got many and different referent objects, including the state, stateless nations, societal groups, tribes, clans, quasi-supranational units like the European Union, the whole international system, which we call the systematic referent object. But you know what? According to the Copenhagen School, the state remains the main referent object in political security. And you may recall that one of the contributions of the Copenhagen School is the socially constructed or the socially construction of security, right? So they socially constructed the concept of security, which refers to their theory of securitization. So what is the definition of security? Well, security is a social constructed concept. Depends on what? On social interactions between securitizing actors and audience, right? So securitizing the actor would deliver or would make a speech act, trying in order to convince the audience that we've got a security issue here that needs to be handled using extraordinary or special measures, right? So what are the securitizing actors here? I mean, in the state as a referent object, it is easy to identify the securitizing actors. The government, the executive, the leadership is the securitizing actors, political elite. But also in terms of the quasi-supranational unit like the European Union, you can identify also the securitizing actors because we've got institutions or structures, decision-making structure within the European Union. We are talking about the European Council or the Council of Ministers or the European Commission, but most importantly the European Council, right? Within the systematic level, I mean in the international system, you can talk about, for example, the United Nations in general, or the Security Council in particular, and the General Assembly also of the United Nations. Anyway, here we've got many securitizing actors and many referent objects, right? But um, um, it's easy to identify securitizing actor when it comes to the state. And sometimes because we've got many and different securitizing actors and many and different referent objects, we may have some sort of dual or even multi securitization. But let's talk about the dual securitization, meaning that we've got two different securitizing actors trying to what? Securitize some issue or the same issue, right? Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, right? Here, the United Nations or the international society or the international system or the systematic referent object considered this as a threat, existential threat to it. So the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990 was considered or perceived as existential threat to the international society, to the international system. Why? Because it threatened, many fundamental principles that the international society, that the international system is based upon. The prohibition of the use of military force, the non-intervention principle, respect of sovereignty of other states, and others. Peaceful settlement of problems or disputes between states. So this event, the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990, was an existential threat to the international system, the international society. This is why the international system, the international society, the United Nations Security Council started to securitize it, meaning that trying to convince here the international society or the people around the world that we've got a serious threat here and we need to handle it using extraordinary or special measures. This is how come the Security Council approved the use of force to expel the Iraqi forces from Kuwait, right? Special measures. And it was successful securitization. And after this, the UN Security Council resolution, a coalition of the willing was formed under the leadership of the United States. The purpose was just to expel the Iraqi forces from Kuwait. It was successful securitization. At the same time, or on the other front, the Iraqi front, the Saddam Hussein regime was considering this kind of securitization by the international system as what? As a threat to Iraq's sovereignty. After all, the Iraqi government at that time considered Kuwait as a governorate or an integral part of Iraq, an Iraqi governorate. So it is considered, Kuwait was considered as an integral part of the Iraqi territory. So the Iraqi government was involved in securitization also, trying to convince its people and maybe some Arabs that Iraq's sovereignty is under threat. By what? By the coalition of the willing led by the United States. So we've got here a dual securitization happened at the same time by different securitizing actors. The United Nations or the Security Council within the United Nations at the international system level, and the Iraqi government at the domestic level. And you know what was the outcome, right? So a dual securitization may take place at the same time. And this actually add what add to the difficulty of the political sector of security. It's confusing because it has many securitizing actors and many different objects. And we are talking about threats to ideas, threats to sovereignty, threats to ideology, threats to legitimacy of the state, right? And we are talking about non what? Non-military, non-environmental, non-economic threats to the state. So it is the widest sector of all, and it is also a residual one, and all in all, it is a confusing sector of security introduced by the Copenhagen School. And to conclude, some actually would refer to the political security as the regime security, right? So when the regime security is under threat, so we are talking about political threats to the state, right? But you know what? We just mentioned, yes, the regime security here is when the regime is under threat, it means that you are questioning either the legitimacy of the regime, so the legitimacy of Al-Assad's regime, for example, or Al-Assad government in Syria, or you are denying Al-Assad regime recognition, so you are freezing Syria's membership in the Arab League, in the United Nations, for example. But you know what? Yes, the regime security touches on the most important part of political security, which is the state, because the state is the main different object. But you know what? It doesn't include, for example, or it doesn't include a reference to the fact that in political sector of security we've got other referent objects, other securitizing actors than the state. Thank you for listening, and see you. Last thought on political security. Political security is all about threats to sovereignty, to state sovereignty. So now we have to define what we mean by state sovereignty. Sovereignty is all about the supreme authority in the land, the supreme authority exercised within a specific territory. This supreme authority exercised by the government within a specific territory. So Egypt's sovereignty is exercised by the Egyptian government within the borders, the boundaries of Egypt. The supreme authority exercised by the government within a specific territory might be threatened from within, from inside, or from outside. So it is like we've got internal threats to sovereignty and external threats to sovereignty. So internal threats to sovereignty would arise when you have a separatist, for example, a separatist movement, secessionist movement, like what's going on in Catalonia, in Iraqi Kurdistan. It is like you are threatening the legitimacy of the state. You don't recognize that the Spanish government or the Iraqi government must exercise supreme authority within Iraqi Kurdistan or within Catalonia. So it is like a separatist movement is threatening the legitimacy of the state, right? So this is how come state sovereignty may be threatened from within by threatening legitimacy. And state sovereignty might be threatened from outside by threatening the non-intervention principle. So because a state is sovereign means that other states must refrain from interfering in the domestic affairs of the state. It is like state has a system term, which is non-intervention. States means non-intervention. So when trying to interfere, when a foreign actor trying to interfere in the state's territory, it is so this is an existential threat, an existential political threat to state sovereignty. But you have to put into consideration, you have to be extra careful here, because foreign actors will not claim that they are threatening state sovereignty, even though they are interfering in the state's domestic affairs, or in they wouldn't claim that they are threatening state sovereignty. They would use, for example, a cover, like, for example, humanitarian intervention, or protecting human rights, or protecting their citizens within the state. So they will not claim that they are threatening state sovereignty, but what they would claim? They would claim that, well, we don't recognize this government or that government as a representative of state sovereignty, as the one that must exercise state sovereignty. So the Americans or the Turks, they are interfering in Syria. But you know what? If you ask them, they would say, we respect Syria's sovereignty. But it is like, but we don't recognize Al-Assad regime as the one that must exercise the supreme authority within the Syrian territory. So it is like denying recognition. So now political threats may take many forms. Threats to legitimacy, threats to recognition, denying the regime any kind of recognition, or intervention, right? So this was my last thought on political security. Thank you. Let's speak for a minute on your research project. I am not demanding. You should submit a short research paper, 5 to 10 pages long, consists of a research question and through analysis of that question. Your analysis should include some facts and evidence and critical thinking. in an effort to analyze the research question. I'm not demanding also in terms of sources. 3 sources would be more than enough. 3 sources, 3 references. But do you know what? Wikipedia is not recommended. You may choose one of the following topics for your research paper. The theme of our research project is conflict and security issues in the European Mediterranean area, right? So you may choose, for example, to write on terrorism in the area, in the Euromed area, for example, or to be more specific and write a short research paper on the lone wolf terrorism in the Euromed area, for example. You may choose to write on energy security in the European Mediterranean area. You may choose to handle one of the case studies that we discussed in class, including the conflict in Ukraine and its impact on the European Union, the Syrian conflict and its impact on the European Union, the Libyan conflict and how it affects security in the Euro-Mediterranean area, conflict over the Mediterranean gas. You got also plenty of other topics that you may choose to write on. Migration, for example, and this is handled by Kulthum and her group. So on migration, you may focus on, for example, the impact of migration into cybersecurity of the European Union, or how the European Union is handling the issue of migration. You may choose to write on failed states in the European Mediterranean area, I mean here, Libya and Syria. You may choose to write on the European Union joint defense, so the efforts of the European Union leaders to establish some sort of joint defense structure for the European Union. You may choose also to write on the European Union as a regional security complex, so applying the theory of regional security complex on the European Union, or on the European Union and the Middle East, or you may choose to write on the trans-regional interactions between the European Union as a regional security complex and the Middle East as another or a separate regional security complex. You may write on Turkey, the state of Turkey, because I mean Turkey was transformed from an insulator state to a party to the Middle East regional security complex. So you've got plenty of topics to write your research paper on. and it is just 5 to 10 pages long, and must submit on or before April 16.